I'm always delighted to have Dave Dotterrer in the studio with us, and Dave was kind of a unique guy in the middle of the past legislature session, and that was you were the Republican rep between the House caucus and the Senate caucus on budget issues.
That's correct.
And baptism by fire, huh?
That's right. That's right. It's really interesting to see the differences in the caucuses. While they're ideologically joined at the hip, they have different cultures. They have different views. Given that the Senate is half the size of the House of Representatives, a little different mix of politics. Speaker of the House is not the same as the President. Yeah. So all those things are there. It's interesting.
They never had anybody do that before, had they?
No.
So you were the first.
I was the first, and as far as I know, the Democrats don't have anybody on that doing that either. And I really think it helps out a lot. Certainly for me, it was a fascinating viewpoint of the world, but it also gave me a chance. I tried to stay out of trying to dictate or anything like that. But I often found myself going back and forth, and I would hear something in the House, and then I'd go hear something in the Senate, and I'd think, these guys are not exactly on the same sheet of music here, and I just would mention it to them. Yeah. And then they would get together and talk about it a little bit. So
well, that's good. That's good. And so they did listen to you a little bit.
Absolutely, absolutely. It was nice, and it also gave me a chance to look at issues well beyond budget. Yeah. Everybody. A lot of people talk about me as the budget guy, but in a lot of ways, I was not just the budget guy. I also
got to see the big picture.
I got to see the big picture and look at the strategic view of what's really going on in that legislature.
All right. Now, the last time you were here, we talked about the possibility of a special session. You weren't sure and everything else. Well, the governor's called one at the end of the month. Yeah. And I'm sure this has to do with primarily PERS. And there's a lot of risk involved in this, even though something needs to be done. Do you think anything's going to get done with this?
You know what? I can't. I don't know. I've seen the press releases now coming out of the various organizations, and what you're really seeing is the Republicans are still saying, look, the grand bargain is not about PERS versus a tax increase. The grand bargain is PERS, a tax increase possibly, but also reform of the small business tax structure that we have in this state, because that's about jobs in the economy. So I'm not sure that Stephen Covey's seek first to understand all those things. Well, I'm not sure where that's going to go, because you kind of hear on the Democratic side, well, the grand bargain includes these two things. On the Republican side, it includes three. And so that's going to be interesting.
But the purpose of this is that the PERS issue is upside down. We can't afford where it's going. Something has to be done with it. And if you go into session and you just kind of toss the ball around and never come up with anything, that's pretty risky going into an election year.
It is. It is. And I think that in the end, they ought to make the decision. Okay, we're going to do something about PERS.
Okay.
All right.
Has the governor thrown anything on the table?
Yeah, he has, but he hasn't thrown very much on the table. He's really essentially gone back to his original position way back when he, a year and a half ago, or no, not a year and a half ago, about a half a year ago, when he put together his original budget and talked about a certain amount of PERS reform. Okay, he's gone back to that. Just because what was actually passed was PERS light, was only half of what he asked for. So now he's asking for the other half, but he's asking the Republicans to give him this tax increase. And the Republicans are saying, you know what, there's more to this. You asked for a bigger PERS package. All right, go ahead and have that PERS package. But there's also, if you want a tax increase, well, we also need to have more PERS reform, and we also need this small business tax relief.
All right, let's go political for a moment.
Yeah.
Republicans are going into re-election.
That's correct.
Could they possibly allow for a tax increase?
Yeah, I think they could.
Really?
I think that they would be willing to go along with that.
Where?
And say, well, because what you're really looking at is there is a couple of places where you could take the taxes, tax deductions for the wealthy. And I mean, this was Romney's plan, and that's one of the proposals that's on the table. What you really do is you don't increase the tax rates. What you do is, for people over a certain income level, you start staggering and cutting back tax deductions. That's one of the proposals that's on the table. And so that's a possibility, and the Republicans are willing to do that. They understand there's a political risk to that, but the counter to that is yes. But what we also want to do is we want to assist small business in this, the S corps and the LLCs with this tax relief also. So so there's your trade-off.
Okay. Some consultants and people who look kind of over the shoulders of these issues said that there's a 50% chance Oregon's PERS is going to implode.
Correct.
We're not talking 2 or 3%. We're talking 50%. This is a major thing.
Correct.
So you guys could go out there and tweak. I say you guys, you're not elected yet. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the legislature could tweak this. They're still in that 50% range.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's why the PERS, even what the governor is proposing, is not enough. It needs to be much, much bigger than what's being put on the table. Do you think
the employees' unions understand that they are heading towards some kind of a train wreck? This thing is going to implode.
No.
Okay, so they don't care.
I don't think they recognize that. What they've convinced themselves of, and I don't know. The cynical side of me says, well, they they don't want to understand.
Right.
But there are people who you can tell when I heard these discussions up there. They genuinely believe that this was all caused by Wall Street, and it's just this fluke of the 2008-2009. And so therefore we'll recover from this and we'll be back and it'll all be stable and happy days will be here again. And you keep looking at them and saying, have you ever noticed that this happens every 5 to 10 years? You can't have a system that assumes no bad days, and we have bad days. It just happens, and you just look at them and you just go.
All right. A couple of other questions that come out of this, Dave. First of all, how long do you think the session will be, the special session?
It's only called for 1 day. I mean, he's calling it for the 30th. That's my understanding. I don't know how long it'll last. I don't know. He's calling it for the 30th. I don't know how long.
So what happens behind the scenes? All right. So you go in the session for a day, but behind the scenes, the Republicans have got to be meeting and saying, what are we doing here?
That's correct. That's correct. Well, I can tell you, behind the scenes right now, the governor is trying to work a deal. I think that, remember, he hasn't absolutely called for it. He said, here's a consideration. I'd like to do this. I don't think that unless there is a pre-deal, my guess is, I think most people, political analysts, would tell you that it's not going to happen. I mean, in other words, you're going to go into you don't go into the session with no deal. And so if there isn't a deal, then maybe probably the session won't happen.
And that could sway the election, because that could say to me it's a no-win for conservatives, because if they raise taxes, that's going to upset their base.
That's right.
And if they don't do anything, that's going to inflame the unions to vote against them. I mean, so what are you going to do?
Well, no, you know what? First off, the unions aren't going to vote for him anyway.
Well,
so what I mean? So, okay.
All right.
And I think exactly. There's some triangulation going on here. There's no doubt about this, but I just think that what Republicans need to do, and what I'm hearing them say is, look, these are the principles that we stand on. We're not going to change our principles. We will consider your proposal about taxes, but we want tax relief.
Yeah.
So
before we take a break, is there enough money to run the state?
This time around? Yes.
Okay.
Next time, all bets are off.
Really?
All bets are off.
So
I really, the economy of Oregon is not improving that much. It's getting a little bit better, but we are putting in place programs that we can't afford to operate, and particularly if you don't do PERS. I mean, if you would do PERS in a big way, that would have a huge impact on your ability to fund state government. You could significantly reduce the cost of it. And the other part that we need to remember is much of the money that gets spent by the state, particularly in the human services area, is actually spent by the counties. Okay, so your state government is sending money to the counties, and so it's their PERS costs that matter also. If you can reduce PERS, it has the biggest impact on your local governments. That's 40%. So there's so many moving parts here, and that's the problem. I don't see anybody stepping back and looking at the bigger picture.
Wow.
So.
All right, now we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Dave, and he's going to say something here exclusive and first, and I'm going to pull it out of him. And he's in the hot seat, and I'm not letting him go. We'll be right back with Dave Dotterrer. Okay, we're back, and our guest today is Dave Dotterrer, and he is telling us a little bit about the expected, well, it's now been announced, there'll be a special session, the Oregon Legislature coming up September 30th, and it's to deal with PERS, and I guess at this point we'll see, huh?
We'll see. Yeah, the governor was, what he's put on the table is PERS and a tax increase. And the Republicans just put out Senate Republicans just put out a press release last night that said PERS, the tax increase, and small business tax relief.
Yeah.
That's what's on the table. Okay, so we'll see what ends up on the table.
All right, but you know, if you give the numbers, the D's can do what they want.
They can't do the tax increase,
right?
But they can do PERS, and that's what the Republicans have said to them. You know what? You don't need us for PERS. If you think PERS is so important, just pass PERS.
Yeah.
And we'll all come together. We'll pass it, and we'll all go home. Now we would push for a bigger PERS, but the Republicans would vote for more PERS, obviously.
All right, I want to take you to a headline that popped up in the news last night, and actually this happened last Tuesday, and that is Northern California County, this is Siskiyou County, voted 4-1 of a declaration of succession from the state of Oregon. And they go down here a little bit further and they say, and we want Northern California and Southern Oregon to join us in the creation of the new state called the state of Jefferson. You probably have heard that.
Oh, absolutely.
For a long time.
That's pre-World War II.
This is the first time we've actually seen some form of a government take action on this. What do you think of that?
My first thought is this.
Yeah.
I don't blame them.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
I look at it and I say, you know, I don't know what the California Constitution says about succession or anything like that, but you can't blame them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, they're looking at it and they're saying, you know what? We've got this huge state. We're being overrun by people in another part of the state. We're not living the lifestyle that we would like to live.
Yeah.
And I hear that also from people in Southern Oregon about the Portland metro area.
Yeah.
This is not about. This is way too much about Portland area.
Well, if you read that whole article, that's exactly what they're saying. They don't understand our lifestyle and what we do in these rural areas. Sacramento's totally out of touch with Siskiyou County. And we'd have to say in some ways, Salem's out of touch with Jackson County.
Well, that's exactly right. And interestingly, last week, the state economist put out his forecast, and it didn't change very much.
Yeah.
Okay, and he said the economy was going to grow. But you know, Josh Lehner is the guy. He's a PhD economist, really smart guy, really nice guy. And he came out and he said, I want to just raise an issue as an economist. We have a problem in this state, and that's the economic differential between the metro area and the rest of Oregon.
Really?
And he's looking at it from an economist's standpoint.
That's kind of the first time they said it publicly, haven't they?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I found that really interesting. He's raising that issue as the state economist, saying we're becoming economically two states, and that creates huge economic dislocation and disjoint between how we govern and all. And I thought, that is a profound piece.
Well, we've known for quite some time Tri-County controls Salem to a certain degree.
Right.
You know, I ran in the 2nd Congressional District, and I can tell you the mindset in the 2nd Congressional District doesn't even begin to fit the other 4 congressional districts.
That's correct. And the problem is that that Tri-County area believes that they can dictate to the rest of us, this is the way the state of Oregon should be. Right. And of course, you get into the local control issues, and you know, we're different. But we have one set of land use, for example, we have one set of Oregon land use code that applies to everywhere. And you kind of look at that and go, no, that's not right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, in reading the article, apparently Siskiyou County, it's symbolic. This vote is symbolic. But it does set the discussion on the table in a fairly significant way. It would have to go down to Sacramento through the legislature for some further consideration or even allow it to get on the ballot. Then I think they have to come back to the various cities who would sign off on all of that. I would assume the same process would be for the counties of Oregon who would consider this, but they looked at it one time, David. It was kind of funny because they looked at it and thought, well, if we drew the line somewhere around Roseburg and we took it down to about Reading, somewhere in that area, it ended up being one of the richest natural resource states in the whole country.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Because of the forestry and the water.
That's correct. That doesn't surprise me at all. You know, and you know, it would be absolutely amazing that the Portland area would say, "Oh, sure, you guys go ahead and take off on your own. We'll let you go." That's, you know, they're not going to let that happen.
No. Well, anyway.
But I mean, but I think it's what's good about this is the symbolic message you've sent to them.
Right.
Look,
get off our backs.
You know, we're not taking this anymore.
Yeah.
You know? I think it's a good idea.
All right, now Dave, you've been involved in this, and I'm assuming you have a rich military history. How many years?
27.
27 years in the Marine. And what was your rank when you retired?
Colonel.
A colonel.
Yeah.
And thank you for your service.
Okay.
And then you're pulled into politics. What pulled you into this?
You know, I didn't get pulled so much into politics as I got pulled into policy.
Okay.
And policy, that was my background. You know, a graduate degree from the Naval War College in policy and strategy. Wow. And I just really got interested in this connection between where do we want to be and how do we get there, and what are the things that need to happen? That's what pulled me into it. So I got pulled into policy, not into politics.
Yeah.
In a democracy, they become the same.
Yeah. I think there's another part of this. So sometimes you can get pulled in, you get pulled into public service, which happens to be political, unfortunately. All right, so you've made a big decision in your life. You want to share us, and you want to hear it here for the first time on Focus today?
I am going to announce next Thursday that I'm running again for state senate.
Okay.
I'm going to run for District 3. It's the position I ran for 4 years ago, or three years ago now, and I'm going to go for it again.
Okay, and that's currently held by Senator Alan Bates.
That's correct.
That takes in portions of Ashland.
It takes in essentially the southern half of Jackson County,
okay, so
including most of Medford.
Most of Medford.
And out to Jacksonville. It does not take in just little small pieces of, say, Central Point and that kind of place.
And then on down through the to the bottom of the state.
Right.
All right. So you are going to officially announce that next
Thursday.
Next Thursday
at 10 o'clock at the county courthouse steps.
Well, we wish you the best, and I think with your experience and your volunteer service. Now, you went up there. Dave went up there as a volunteer to work with, at the time, House member Dennis Richardson, who's now running for governor.
Right.
And in that process, you learn how things work, and then the caucus has asked you to be their liaison, which in itself is quite an endorsement.
Yeah, and it ended up being that they brought me on, and they pay you nominally.
Yeah.
And but you know, it's all part of this whole idea of service. You know, it's interesting. You know, reading 2 Timothy, and it talked about, you know, fan the flames of the Spirit of God, and it talks because the Spirit gives you power, love, and self-discipline.
Right.
Well, that power is not about the secular progressive power.
Right.
It's about the power to participate and have the wisdom from God to understand what needs to be done. That's the power that moves me. It isn't about dictating to other people and, oh, I want to be in control and we got to do this and we've got to do that. No, that's not what that's about. That's not the power that we need from the Spirit. So those things motivate me, that I want to be part of that process.
Well, I commend you and wish you the best in this endeavor. And I guess you can't officially file it to when, the 26th or something?
No, actually the 12th.
The 12th. Okay.
The 12th. Yeah, that's the reason we picked the date. We just said, look, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down, I'm going to file at the courthouse, and then I'm going to have an announcement rally.
Okay, that's great. All right, part of this is so interesting. Oregon still is struggling. We have not done a whole lot to increase jobs. That's the end of the day. Where are the jobs? Where's the industry? What can we do to get this thing back on track?
That's right. And the issue is, you know, a job is not just about the economics of it. A job is spiritual. It's about who you are, and it's about who we are as a society.
Right.
And it says a lot about that. And again, this is where, for example, this issue with the Republicans about the small business tax relief.
Right.
Okay, where do the jobs come from?
Small business.
Small business.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's help them out. Now, there's a trade-off, and that's where the Republicans have had to make this decision about, well, they're philosophically opposed to this tax increase, but okay, understand that they're not the party in power, and if they want to increase the jobs, you're going to have to give the other side something. Okay, and so they're biting their tongue or biting their lip and going, okay, and this is worth it. And so that's where that comes from, and you've just got to do that. The state has got to do the things that encourage those entrepreneurs and those small business people to produce those jobs. That's where it comes from.
Well, we just got to have it.
Yeah.
The general feeling in the state, as you worked in the caucuses, do you feel within the caucuses that there is a potential of a swing back to the right in the House and the Senate?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely. There's that possibility. I mean, people are actually looking out there and seeing that, this is not working out. Mm-hmm. This is not working. We are well below, not only in Oregon but nationally, where we ought to be in economic growth and therefore job creation. Traditionally from a recession, and well below the average over the last 100 years of how the state and the national economy has been growing. And without that growth, you're just not going to have the jobs. You've got to have that growth. And that gets back to the natural resources and tax policy and all those other
everything
things.
We're talking about.
Exactly.
Well, the best to you again. He's announcing next week on the 12th that he will be running for the Oregon Senate again against sitting Senator Alan Bates. We haven't heard if he's going to run again yet, have we?
No, we have not.
We have not heard that. So chances are you'll have a fairly easy primary. Then things get a little heated up.
Absolutely.
About a year from now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
No, I'm starting right now.
All right.
That's the whole point.
Blessings to you. You're in our
Thank you
thoughts
very
and prayers, and keep up the good work.
Well, thanks a lot.
Okay, we'll be right back.